action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards, co-founder and MD. Today, I've caught Tommy Mason, the most famous Tommy to come out of Birmingham after Tommy Shelby. Tommy is the founder and lead designer of Studio Mason, a digital and branding agency based in Brum. An experienced creative specialising in UX, UI and branding and doing great work for the likes of BMW and Pizza Express, Tommy is a man who embodies the word scamp. He was nominated for the Drum's Young Designer of the Year 2018, and more recently nabbed himself one of their Chip Shop Awards. Tommy says, being a designer is like being a doctor. Most of the time it's enjoyable helping people, but every now and then you have to face an arsehole. Well, welcome to the show, Tommy.
What an introduction.
What a quote.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. I'm surprised I came up with it, to be honest. But yeah.
Right, 7 quickfire questions, Tommy. Birmingham or London?
Birmingham every single day.
Peaky Blinders or Breaking Bad?
Peaky Blinders. Stick with the home.
Gareth Barry or Gabby Agbonlahor?
Oh, Gabby. Gabby.
He's a hero, Lee.
Oh, yeah, absolute hero.
Black Sabbath or UB40?
Oh, UB40. I'm not much into him rock. UB40 every single day. Red wine.
Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit?
Oh, Lord of the Rings, but saying that I've not watched either of them, so...
Both written in Birmingham, apparently. I only found that out earlier. Photoshop or Illustrator?
Illustrator.
And lastly, form or function?
Function.
Nice. Good answers. Didn't stumble at all. Normally we trip people up. You did well.
Yeah, I was expecting like ant or deck or something along those lines.
Go on then, ant or deck?
Oh, Ant seems like he has much of a better time on the weekend, so I'm going to go with Ant.
Good shout. So Tommy, what was your first ever job, and then what was your first design job?
My first ever job was actually working for my dad. My dad owns a car recovery firm, and I naturally kind of went from school into that. So it's kind of like picking up cars that are broken down, basically. And I didn't do well with the cold outside, and I just knew it wasn't for me. Like going up to the yard every day at 8 o'clock and unlocking these massive gates, which kind of I'm not the biggest of guys, and these gates just took me with them every single morning. And definitely was not for me getting into the oil and the petrol and stuff. So that wasn't. I had to break his heart basically, because he's built me up over these years to like love trucks and stuff. And on the first week, I was like, you know what, Dad, this ain't for me. This. I kind of like let him down, so he ended up having another son. So I'm just kind of like the middle one now. So kind of broke his heart there. But that was my first ever job. I mean, it lasted a week. So after that, I was like, and then when I told him I'm going to go back and go to like college and start painting and drawing, he was just like, "What the fuck are you, man?" He was just like, "You are no son of mine." But now he understands, kind of. He thinks I work at Vista Print, I'm pretty sure. But yeah. He understands now. But
nice.
Yeah, my first design role was straight from college. Actually, I went into a apprenticeship at a local agency, which is no longer running, but it was a Bromsgrove agency which specialised in traditional graphic design and then slowly moved to digital as well.
That's interesting, because normally the route is do I go to uni or do I not? And I think there's a lot to be said for design apprenticeships, but they're probably less available. I don't know. How did you stumble upon your one?
When I was at college, I was kind of determined I was going to do an apprenticeship, and I remember talking to my fashion tutor and saying I'm going to get an apprenticeship in graphic design, and her words were, "They're like gold dust. You'll never get one." So I kind of like took that and said, "Bollocks to you! I'm gonna try and find one." So I like proving people wrong. So I just literally Googled, and at the time there was a new startup brand from Birmingham called Creative Alliance, who are still running, and they're really big now compared to what they were when I first found them. But they specialise in purely apprenticeships within the creative industry. And it was by a complete fluke that I stumbled upon the one in my hometown of Bromsgrove. So I went for the interview, and I showed them, because at the time I had a very bare, basic portfolio from college. And the only thing I could show them was this table that I've made and a tiny, tiny bit of graphic design, which I've put along this table. And I've seen it recently, actually. And honestly, I don't know how I got the job. I was either struggling for candidates or just felt sorry for me. But yeah, that's how I kind of like stumbled upon it, because I've always learned better by doing as opposed to kind of tests. At school, I was really poor at the tests, but doing the actual work, I kind of like thrived in that area. So I know apprenticeships were more for me as opposed to filling box ticking criteria.
And then what was it like your kind of day one on the apprenticeship? Was it run within the agency?
Yeah, so it's purely by the agency. I'd have a tutor come in every couple of months just to make sure I'm filling all the criteria that I need. But it was literally as if someone just picked you out of college and put you in a everyday agency. And at the time, I didn't even know what role I was meant to be doing. I got there and we're designing to these brief things which didn't make any sense whatsoever. And it was so fast paced. And obviously, at college, you're used to spending 6 months on creating an A4 piece of paper, or like pissing around in Photoshop, putting clones and stamps and stuff. And all of a sudden, I've just been thrown into like the creative suite, because I wasn't like fully immersed in the creative suite either at this time. We was using like SketchUp or Freehand MX, it was called at the time, and like, this thing called Quark, which, my God, if you ever use Quark, I don't wish it on my worst enemy. And I was just kind of thrown into the creative suite to kind of learn it. And for the first year, I was purely artworking. So that's like getting stuff ready for print, basically. So I wasn't touching any digital. Never touched a website in like the first year, and it was just kind of print production. But at a time, what I didn't know, whilst I was doing that print production, I was learning the creative suite, learning InDesign, learning Photoshop, learning Illustrator, and learning more importantly the processes, headlines and stuff. So yeah, it was really in depth. But at the time, I thought I was balling. Like, I was on an apprenticeship wage, but I thought I was absolutely like milking it. I was going to the local pub on the weekend going, guys, I've got this round. Don't worry, I'm a designer.
It's on me.
It's on me. I've got these. Looking back on it now, well, yeah, that was not the case.
And did you find you loved it from day one? Like, because obviously there's a lot under the bonnet in terms of process and things to learn. And I imagine going in almost cold, if you like, from college, where, as you say, you had 6 months to come up with not a lot. It must have been a challenge at the same time. But did you really just kind of go with it?
I did love it. It was pretty stressful, and because I wanted to be on par with the designers already there. But of course, these guys have been like designers for like 5 to 8 years already above me, and I'm 2 weeks in the job, and I want to be as good as them. Which obviously, a lot of the time, my designs look great, but if you actually went into the design file, it was absolute chaos. Like, the layers would be all hidden, and there'd be some clipping path which is like in size a flux capacitor or something, and it was absolute chaos. If one of the designers went into, if I was ever ill, and that was my main fear, if I was ever sick, my fear was another designer picking up my design file, because I know that they would never find in a million years what I've done, because I've completely winged it. A lot of time it was kind of like sitting down and with the designers at the time, and my mentor, who was the lead designer there, Richard, and him pretty much explaining, this is the way we do it, and this is the way it's done. But from there, you kind of pick up patterns. So I kind of noticed that he would design a certain way for one type of client, and pick up just things that you don't really get taught at college, just the way designers work and the processes.
You made me feel really edgy there when you were talking about the state of your design files. So I think we need to move on from that. And then, so how did you go from that to specialising in UX and UI design?
So it was quite a big gap in between that. So when I started off as an apprenticeship at that agency, I was there for a good 4 years. Towards the end of that, I started doing digital, but at this time I was using like Photoshop and kind of old school web design tools. It was only when I maybe moved to my second agency, just further afield in Warwickshire, where I was eventually, just before leaving, I was lead digital designer. That I kind of took a drop to go from midway back to junior to get to this agency because I knew it was a better stepping stone for me. And then from there, I started kind of working with the digital designers there that were there at the time, and worked with them on a lot of projects. So kind of been like pretty much their sidekick. And then eventually, over the years, I've kind of like built my knowledge up from there, especially my UI skills. And eventually, the lead digital guy there left, and I had to kind of like fill his shoes almost. So I was the only one there which was had much interest in digital. I think the other designers could have definitely done it, but they didn't have much interest in it. They was very comfortable with print, and that's what they liked and enjoyed as well. So that's where I kind of like fell into the UI role, and over the years from there, it's kind of led to more UX as UX has become more of a topic in digital design. And from there, yeah, I've always had a thirst for knowing the latest technology and knowing the latest software and tools and being able to offer them. And that's kind of a key thing with my offering as well, that I can offer an all-round fit.
Nice. So as you say, there's a lot of time that went between that and specialising.
Yeah.
And now you're freelancing. So you were in the agency world for best part of 7-8 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I started when I was about 18 and now I'm 27. So yeah, it's quite a while.
And how come you went freelance? What made you decide to take that leap?
I've always wanted to have my own brand, and I suppose it was kind of forced upon me as well because the agency I was at the time, just before going freelance, wasn't really like working for me. It wasn't creative enough. It was very kind of like psychology, kind of scientific, which is great, but I also enjoy the creativity side of things and like the big idea and the big concepts, and especially bringing the brand into it as well. And this isn't something they offered at all. So I know it wasn't really a right fit for me. So I wanted to do my own thing, but I kind of knew that I wanted my own brand, and it's just a leap of faith, really. It was now or never because at the time I was living at home still. I didn't really have any dependencies, and I think if in a time in my life where I could take that leap and take that risk, and it not be detrimental, it was now or never. So I kind of just took that leap there and then.
Nice. And how have you found it?
A massive learning curve. Yeah, it's great. I love working for myself and building that brand from the ground up as well. Especially, it's literally gone from nothing to definitely something. And knowing that it's all on you and all because of you and the people you surround yourself with as well, of course, and all the people that support you. And it's great. I love it. I mean, definitely, obviously, it has its challenges, but it's definitely something I want to continue and something I'm actually loving at the moment.
Are there any challenges you face that you can share with us, or to help anyone thinking about maybe going freelance, something they might not have anticipated? Did anything take you by surprise?
Yeah, I mean, the number of challenges. For example, like when I was a designer at an agency, all you do is design. You get your brief and you design. But when you're freelance, obviously you work for yourself. You're not just a designer, but you're the finance manager. You're the new business executive. You're the PR and social media executive as well as a lead designer. So the biggest challenge and the biggest learning curve is you've gone from just being a designer to being every single person that you know of in the agency to make that tick over. So it's you have to learn a lot of like finance and kind of project management as well yourself, and to make all the projects run smoothly. But at the same time, I think as long as you're just down to earth and you're a people person, then I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that people don't necessarily think about. I mean, it's much like starting an agency. You end up wearing so many hats. Sometimes you miss the day that you could wear your designer hat or creative hat, whatever it was, prior all day long. But as you say, you learn from it.
Yeah, you definitely got to kind of position yourself as like a Swiss Army knife. You've got to be able to drop into any agency no matter where you are, even if it's remote, and fall into that agency perfectly. Not just that, but produce great work without too much hand holding. So you're expected to drop into any agency, produce the work to the brief on time without any kind of too much direction, because that's what they're paying you for, right? They're paying you to be that extra design resource. So you kind of need to fit in as a designer within their team.
And how do you find working remotely?
I personally enjoy it. Obviously, it has its kind of challenges. So, like finding a quiet room in the house is always difficult, especially when you've got a little dog. It's quite a challenge. But I like it because I always found myself more productive at home anyway. Because when I was working at an agency, I'd always go home and kind of like tinker away at home with my own like projects and kind of design. I design in my spare time. It's quite sad, really. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I enjoy design. So when I'm at home, I'll be designing anyway. So it's kind of like I'm getting paid to do what I'd be doing if I wasn't being paid for it. At home is where I feel most comfortable as well. It's nice to have kind of that studio vibe when you go into a studio and you got all the guys around you, and you're all kind of chatting and inspiring each other. But with Slack and obviously whoever you surround yourself with, especially myself, a lot of my friends are naturally designers because of the connections you built up over the years. It's not hard just to ping someone a message or have like an open chat on Tandem and have that studio vibe, but at home, it's good.
Yeah. So do you find yourself leaning on those design communities then to get just that?
Yeah, I lean on them just to stay in a loop. So I know there's a chat called Slack channel called Design Birmingham where you can. There's just open chats where like, have you seen this latest piece of software? Have you seen the latest Figma update? Have you seen the latest Sketch update, etc. But you can keep in the loop there as well. But also you've got your personal friends. So a lot of my friends, like I said, my friends are designers. So I can ping them a message and say, guys, what do you think to this? Kind of send them a link to a prototype, and they'll just literally just give feedback. Just because that's the way we help each other out, really. But when you're a freelancer, you have a network of other freelancers, which you naturally kind of either recommend when you can't do jobs, or you can just like pick their brains. It's not a competitive market where you can't talk to each other, or you wouldn't recommend another freelancer because they might take your work, kind of thing. It works both ways. You recommend them, and they recommend you as well. So it's nice. It's a nice, friendly place.
Yeah, and I think it's important as a freelancer to not kind of feel stuck on your own. I remember talking to Dave Harland, who we obviously both know, about his setup as a freelancer and where he works. He's actually surrounded by other types of creatives, and I think that I recall he said that was a vital part of the environment for him.
Yeah, it's nice to have that support network because obviously you're all in the same position. You all face the same challenges as well, and when you can learn about the same thing with a person, you naturally become friends. So when you all face the kind of same difficulties, and it's not just you in that. Everyone's in the same kind of boat, and at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to make a living. So I don't think anyone's going to try to stop you doing that. I think there's a lot of work out there for freelancers. It's not like if another freelancer joins the club tomorrow that we've all suddenly got no work. There's enough out there for everyone, and I think if everyone works together, it can be a nice place. Surprisingly, the creative industry, it can be. It just needs everyone to be nice to each other.
Yeah. Let's touch on another specific challenge that you probably couldn't have anticipated, but it's a challenge that I've been through numerous times since starting Gasp, and that's the pleasure of getting sued.
Oh yeah.
So, or at least threatened legally. So you've recently rebranded. Has anything changed going from Scamp to Mason?
No, to be fair, I remember putting a LinkedIn post out, and I was kind of like wondering, do I do this, or do I just change and not tell anyone, and just kind of have done with it. But he actually done me a favour because it boosted my social profile quite a bit because it was classed as a rebrand, I suppose, and people like jumping on the back of it saying this is great. I love the new branding, which actually won me some new work, interestingly enough. And it's a very good conversation starter as well when people are like, oh, I saw you, someone tried suing you. And I was like, yeah, so do you want me to do your brand? And I was like, oh, I promise you won't get sued. So yeah, it's kind of, it's quite done quite well because it's thrown me back into the spotlight for momentarily and won some work off the back of it. And if anyone has any problems with that name, they can. I didn't choose it. I didn't choose my surname, did I? So they can go in and have a.
No, they need to sue your
exactly,
mum and dad.
Yeah, exactly. Just throw it back on their plate.
He's disowned you anyway, so fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not my problem though.
No. Okay, nice. Well, I like Mason. I mean, Mason's a strong name anyway. Funny enough, one of my very first studio directors was a chap called Phil Mason, and he's a brilliant bloke, really brilliant, talented chap, and so there's meaning in it for me. But crucially, there's heritage, isn't there? It's Tommy Mason.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
Onwards and upwards. I want to talk about accessibility in design. So accessibility, for various reasons, is something that seems to be maybe treated with a bit more, or certainly thought about more in design and in production. So whether you're looking at developing websites, any type of media, it seems to increasingly being much more accessible than perhaps it used to be. I'm not sure if that's true. What inspired you to focus on accessibility? Because I know that's something that's important for you.
Yeah, I've definitely always been an advocate. Well, since moving into design, been an advocate for it. And to be fair, what inspired it probably is that I also suffer from disabilities, both mental and motor as well. So I've got epilepsy and cerebral palsy. I was born with them, so 27 years I've been with them now. So, and they don't go away, even though they're pretty much invisible. So if you met me, you wouldn't probably know that I have this. But when I first get into design and started creating interfaces and kind of those kind of things, my little brother also suffers from dyslexia, and one of the first things I created when I could do these things was a new interface for he had an Android at the time, and he struggled like texting my parents, but at school he was fine because he had this kind of like blue filter which he used to put over his books and his writing books as well. So he had that kind of support as a piece of card at school, but when he was trying to text even myself, my brother, or my parents, he really struggled. So I designed him a new interface, which looking back in today's world is probably horrifically bad, but he kind of helped him out in a time that he needed it, and offered him a solution basically. So I've always been keen to offer solutions to people, and obviously when it comes to accessibility, we've got this amazing kind of resource, which is the World Wide Web, and it's important that every person has the right to access that, and the same resources online. It's like you wouldn't build a hotel without any elevators or lifts. You build it for everyone, no matter what their needs are or kind of what their restrictions are as such. And I think winning people is a lot more rewarding than winning awards. I think as designers, we get too caught up about seeing our names on awards websites and the Drum and MoMA awards and all this jazz, and it looks great on your LinkedIn, but I'd rather win people and kind of offer them solutions that made their life easier than another glass award on a trophy cabinet as such.
Yeah, I mean that's what design really is. I mean it's a method of communicating, isn't it? And as you, I'm pleased to say, chose function over form in the quickfire. Form follows function. So ultimately, if you want to make something functional for anyone, regardless of any accessibility needs, it's the right route, surely, because otherwise you're not communicating. You're making it ambiguous and ineffective.
Yeah, exactly. Design. A lot of people say like design is how it works, and 100% it is how it works. And don't get me wrong, UI is also important, obviously, because people say design is how it works, but let's not forget that how it looks indicates how it works. So UI also is very important when it comes to accessibility as well. But yeah, both need to work in kind of cross-pollinating each other.
And am I right? Are you finding in your work and with your added kind of awareness of websites, for example, being accessible, are you finding that more things are being developed with accessibility in mind?
Yeah, it's almost one of the first things that is currently coming up to me and saying, like, I think that I don't know if they find me because I talk about accessibility a lot, or just because they're being made more aware of it in their day to day. That a lot of people's kind of like OKRs, objective key results for this quarter is almost we need to be more accessible, and people are identifying it, and it's definitely something they kind of want to push and move on, because if they're not being accessible, then it's not going to be a great user experience, but also Google won't rank it as well in the Lighthouse score as well. So it's definitely something people are being more aware of.
How do people ensure that their work results in a more accessible experience? Are there any tips or anything that you can recommend people look into?
Yeah, there's a criteria called WCAG, which is a criteria that can ensure you're being more inclusive in your design. So it's like a checklist criteria. It's almost like an artwork checklist. Before you send something to print, you check that the overprint is off, the text is outlined, for example, whatever you're going to do in print, But this is like a checklist which makes sure that your kind of design is accessible. There's also a lot of tools out there, which kind of like plugins for Sketch and Figma, for example, which allow you to check color contrasting. So there is one called color contrast. I know there's many out there. I've actually got a link on my site which points you to all these different kind of tools as well, so you can download them as plugins. And this WCAG, for example, will push things such as like alt text on images, color contrast, supporting keyboard navigation, which is actually the law. If you're not doing that on your website, you're actually breaking the law. And I know Target, big chain in America, recently got sued millions of pounds for not doing that because their website was inaccessible. So it's definitely something people should be considering.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, great. Well, if you share those links, we'll add them to this episode listing so people can check those out.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. I've got a couple of listener questions for you, Tommy.
Cool.
So, asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger. But we've got two for you. Starting with Laura. So we may have kind of skirted around this to start with, but she asks, what's your advice for those starting out in the creative industry, e.g. university versus apprenticeships?
My advice for starting out in the industry, probably don't really care what people think, because a lot of people have opinions, but they don't mean they're valid opinions as such. There's a lot of people in our industry which are completely winging it, and anyone who says they're not is a total lie, because we don't know what the future holds. If you asked a designer, 20 years ago, have you designed any apps? He would probably tell you he has, but in a lot of people just say yes to doing a design job when they don't really know how they're going to do it. And you shouldn't know how you're going to do something. You shouldn't know an answer to a brief 5 minutes after reading the brief. You need to experiment and create concepts and talk to people. Don't feel like you need to come out with a solution purely by yourself, because it's not going to happen. You need people to bounce off. And don't be afraid to take risks, because if you take the risk, the payoff of that risk will be greater than if you played it safe. You'd rather kind of ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. So definitely take risks.
Nice. Yeah, you're speaking my language there. Totally. I also like your point about it being okay not to know the answer within 5 minutes of a brief, and I think that's true in so many areas of our industry. And I don't just mean design. I mean, marketing. If you're looking at brand and strategy work, and one of my favourite learnings from Mark Ritson has always been the line, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out," is basically the answer to most questions we get asked in our industry. And I think it sadly takes some time for people to really get the confidence to actually say that in a client briefing session. You kind of maybe go into, or certainly more likely in the younger phase of your life, to feel like you need to have the answer.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge we face in the design world as well, when people say, how long is it going to take to create this thing that I don't know what it is yet? And it's like, it's hard to say, oh, I'm going to take 2 weeks, because what you're doing there, you're basically putting a bet on. You're putting a bet on you being able to think of a concept which they're going to like within a certain amount of time, which is pretty much mind reading, and is near on impossible. So it is interesting. So that's definitely a difficult we face. But also, I hate it in like kind of design meetings with clients and stuff, where you'd be in a meeting and a designer would suggest a answer within the briefing meeting, because from the off you've put all your eggs in one basket. Now you're going to start creating a concept that you just agreed on in the actual pitch. So it's definitely something you need to kind of explore and research as well. Research is definitely important, and knowing your market as well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, measuring creativity in units of time is hugely flawed.
Yeah.
No one says, that song's 20 seconds longer, so it must be better.
Yeah, it's the same with timesheets, isn't it? I remember working in agencies, filling in timesheets. Oh, I haven't filled in a timesheet for nearly 2 years now, and it's so much easier. And when I do get asked to put in timesheets, I never know what to say. Like, how can you explain creative research in a timesheet, because it's all in your head? It's a strange world. I don't think we've actually cracked the way of design processes work yet. I think a lot of people do it very differently. And obviously, being a freelancer, you see these different ways agencies work, and I don't think no one has cracked it.
Yeah, I think so much is down to the context, what the work is, and we've sadly found ourselves in a world where you need to fit everything into a spreadsheet, and spreadsheets don't allow room for creativity, sadly.
Yeah, exactly.
Question 2 is from Ben, and Ben asks, "Were you ever tempted to tackle the London scene, or have you always been an advocate for the non-London scene?"
I wouldn't say I'm an advocate for the non-London scene. It never really took my fancy. The only time I've been to London is to design awards, and even then, everyone's fucking on Jamal Noah. Like, they just need to calm down a little bit. Like, if you come to Brum, honestly, I don't know what we're smoking down here, but it's a lot more chill than you guys. Uh, but London's never really took my fancy, to be honest. I'm from a very small town, and if I walked out, I'd probably see like Doris, who's known my mum for 50 years, and she saw me. She probably like raised me, like I went around the house or something like when I was 6. It's a very different world living in a small town compared to London. Probably something I will experience, but I would only do a small stint there, like maybe a 6-month stint or something like that. Definitely not. So I'd rather do like Sweden or yeah, kind of like Stockholm, uh, rather than London. Nothing against London, but it's just not for me. I mean, I've obviously freelance for agencies that are in London, but I'll do it in Birmingham.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? Again, I mean, we've certainly lost talented grads to London agencies because there's that kind of shiny perception that London agencies have, and that's fair enough. That's just
Yeah,
it's just part of the mix,
I
really.
think Brum's really underrated as well. But being so underrated, it's very easy to impress because people don't expect anything. But it's the kind of people who you expect nothing from that produce the unexpected, which is quite nice. I think we've definitely Birmingham like is definitely a big creative kind of city. So I think we've got a lot to offer. There's a lot of cool creatives in Brum as well.
I read the other day as well in researching for our pod is it's the youngest city in England as well. The average age is younger than any other city. Took me by surprise, that
It's
did.
probably because we're having kids at 16.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah. You need to control yourselves up there. Right, so the final part of the interview, Tommy, is our 4 pertinent posers. Starting with number 1, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, probably what I kind of touched upon earlier. Kind of like, don't be afraid if you don't know something. It's fine to admit that you don't know something because you're not meant to know it. You're not meant to know it all yet. You're still young, and listen to everyone and treat everyone as you kind of want to be treated. Don't just treat the boss like nice just because he's the boss. Treat the cleaner the same way you would the boss, kind of thing. Um, which is always something I kind of live by, and just be yourself. I see these articles about how to do kind of self branding and self identity and all this. It's just complete bollocks. Just be yourself. That is your brand. Like, you don't need to pretend to be another brand if that's not you. Like, self branding is the easiest thing to do because all you've got to do is just be who you are. Which we don't need a blog on that.
Nice. We don't need a blog on that. That's my favourite snippet so far. Love it. If you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why, Tommy?
Coffee shop designers. Do you know what I mean? Like those fuckers who walk around in skinny black jeans with a black t-shirt with black square rimmed glasses and holding a Starbucks. Oh man, it's just complete bollocks. No one lives like that. Like, honestly, like the perception some designers give of their life is complete and utter bollocks. It's just like, you don't walk around with your Kodak camera around your neck with your square frame glasses. Nobody actually lives like that. Everyone's house is got like clothes on the bed waiting to be hanged up. Nobody's life is perfect. Like, just remember that Instagram is like the best bits. It's not real. It's not real. I think a lot of time we live in an Instagram kind of world where everything's in place and everything's perfect, and you see these studios where everything's white and clean, and drinking coffee which is out of a perfect mug, and it's just complete bollocks. Everybody knows that as soon as that camera's gone, that studio is absolute chaos because they're trying to get a pitch out the door for 5 o'clock, which they've been told about this morning. It's just complete bollocks. And like, LinkedIn is just as bad because you see these kind of like these CEOs of businesses saying that like they're doing amazing, but everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's faces their challenges. Everybody has a moment where they struggle. Just be honest, and I think if you be honest with your audience, they'll appreciate it a lot more than just pretending that you're doing absolutely fantastic all of the time. because that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, you made a good point about Instagram there that I'm a fan of. That I mean, Instagram is curated. It's not holding up a mirror to someone's life. It's the edited
Yeah, exactly. I
version.
think a lot of people would take it for like, this is actually their diary, their daily diary, and causes a lot of mental health issues because people try and live up to what they see on Instagram. And everybody has arguments. Everybody has a bad day at work. It's just not real, is it?
No, you're bang on there. Number 3, Tommy. Any books that you would recommend to our listeners?
I don't really read, to be honest. Not books anyway. I got read websites and blogs. So Interface Lovers is one that I love going to. There's a lot of interviews from like designers and product designers, which is great. Yeah, I don't really read many books. I more kind of watch like Netflix documentaries, like abstract and stuff like that, as opposed to read books. When I read books, I just look at the words. I don't really take them in, so I kind of just gaze off into my own imagination.
Oh, well, give us a Netflix recommendation. So we've got Interface Lovers for a website. Give us another recommendation of any type or flavour.
Abstract on Netflix is a great little series of documentaries again with different designers. They've recently done another season where they interview the designer from Instagram, a product designer, which is great as well. So great little watches.
Nice. That sounds really good. And number 4, then, we always dedicate every episode to someone, Tommy, and we bestow that honour to our guest who has to give their reason why. So would you kindly dedicate this episode to somebody?
You know what? I'm going to go really soppy. I'm going to dedicate it to Amy, my girlfriend, because a lot of the time I'll sit there and try and think of a concept, and a lot of time it's her who comes up with the concept. So and I'll just claim the invoice. So even my studio names in the past have come from her as well. So yeah, I'll dedicate it to her.
Amazing. Cool. Okay, well, this episode is very proudly dedicated to Amy then. As a final call to action, everyone listening can head over to the episode listing for links to everything we've discussed. So that includes Abstract, Interface Lovers. We'll stick Studio Mason links up there. How can our listeners get more Tommy Mason?
If they really want more Tommy Mason, they can visit me on Instagram. They can visit my site and drop me a message, or just catch me walking around Birmingham. I'm the ginger one, so I'm quite easy to spot.
Amazing. I'm the ginger one. Wicked. Oh, that's brilliant. Nice one. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for joining us, mate. It's been really fun, and I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, mate. Really enjoyed it.
And finally, thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it and review the pod. We value your support. Keep questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online. You can check out CTA Pod on Instagram or just email hello@calltoaction.co.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.